couldn't appreciate Andre until you actually wrestled him. And I never wrestled Andre. I don't think, maybe the odd battle royal, stuff like that. But I used to draw these cartoons on the walls, and they had blackboards in all these arenas and stuff for hockey teams and basketball teams and stuff to draw out strategies or something. But there's a big blackboard, just like a classroom. Blackboards all over the dressing room with. So I would always, when I first got to WWF, no one paid any attention to me or even noticed what I was doing. But sometimes everyone would leave. There was different dressing rooms all the way down the hall, but I would be in my dressing room just by myself. And I would draw these really elaborate X-rated cartoons with every wrestler involved in it. I always had a really good ability to draw wrestling cartoon caricatures of all the wrestlers. Like I could draw Andre and I could draw Kamala, and you knew who everyone was by looking at the cartoon. And of course they were all the way I always drew it was everyone was climbing a big tree, and there was a big tree branch, and they're all climbing the tree and having sex on the tree. Different wrestlers. There was an old lady wrestler that used to hang around the dressing room. All she did was get coffee for everybody, but she was kind of like that old grandma in the Playboy Bunny or the Playboy magazines, that old grandma that's always trying to get laid. She kind of looked like that, but she wasn't far from that. She was always coming on to everybody, anyway. But it was all made up. It was none of this was real, and so I would draw these big and wrestlers all having sex on them. Usually Virgil. Virgil was always hanging himself with his own penis from one of the tree branches. That was usually the key to the cartoon. He'd be like strangling himself while he was hanging. And Andre the Giant would laugh so hard. And Kamala, I can remember certain wrestlers would laugh so hard. Like sometimes somebody would come in and go, Bret's drawing a cartoon, and Andre would actually get up and like speed down to the room to look in, and then he would just laugh so hard. And I mean, really bellyache laugh, where it was like, okay, Andre loves my cartoons. And it's funny because when I first started drawing the cartoons, I didn't let anyone know I was doing them. Like I would just draw them on the blackboard, and then I'd just be getting changed, and people would walk in, and some guys would get mad, like, who the f drew this? And get really mad and stuff. But everyone ever knew, and there was wrestler George Wells, this black football player wrestler that was a good friend of mine. But I remember he came in, and he would try to touch them up a little bit. And then when guys would walk in, they always thought it was him drawing them. And he's like, I didn't draw it. And he would get really, defensive about it. But finally, they became so popular that I thought maybe I should step up and take credit for it, And then eventually I did take credit for the cartoons, and I would draw them all the time. And if anything happened in the dressing room, like a story from the night before, it was my job to put it, like people would say, you got to draw something about Jake Roberts last night. He was with some big girl or something. And I was like, all right. And then I would draw a cartoon about it. And some wrestlers liked it. Some wrestlers got hurt feelings. Like, I don't look like that. I remember some guys almost getting tears in their eyes. Like, I don't look that fat. It's a cartoon, It's like, but Andre really did love my cartoons, and he would laugh so hard. And I do remember one time I drew a cartoon with, I can't tell these stories. All right, I'll do my best. But anyway, I drew this one cartoon with these wrestlers were having sex with some wrestling fan or something like that. And I remember I drew it on the blackboard, and he was one of the agents in the dressing room. I won't say which one, but one of my foremans, basically, and he just flipped out. He just cut a big promo on me. How dare you draw something like, what if my wife walked in and all this stuff? And I'm going, well, what are your wife going to do walking in the dressing room? Like, it's for the wrestlers, it's nobody sees these, and but anyway, he got really mad and told me, don't you ever draw me again. And he was so livid, and I was like, like I say, this is my foreman, like one of my bosses kind of thing. So all right, I got my hand slapped for drawing this X-rated cartoon. And I remember I thought if anything I'd probably get in trouble the next day for it. But the next day we had TV tapings. And I remember I walked in and I'm walking up and I walk in the building and Vince is standing there at the blackboard and he's got chalk in his hand like this. And when I walk past him, he goes, "You can draw anything you want, anytime you want. And if anyone has a problem with it, you tell them to come talk to me about it." And I don't know how he even heard I drew the cartoons, but he said, he goes, "It's good for morale around here. It makes everyone laugh, and it's good for morale." And so that gave me like carte blanche to draw whatever I wanted. I think my favorite cartoon, I don't want to tell you all my cartoons, but my favorite one was, I remember I drew King Kong Bundy. And he was on all fours throwing up, and he was just throwing up a whole big pile of penises. And I remember it was his last day in WWF at that time. He came back later on, but I remember it was such a funny cartoon because I had all these big pile of chopped off penises in and I just remember Bundy came in, and Bundy, you had to love him he had such a great sense of humor. And I can't remember, he went up and he drew all my brothers. Somehow he knew all my brothers' names, but he drew one brother after another on each penis. And but that was like one of my favorite cartoons. And but going back to Andre loved my cartoons so much that I drew him a big giant montage of all the wrestlers. Of course, it wasn't X-rated this time, but it was one with all the wrestlers. It actually had Andre carrying Vince McMahon and Hogan, and everybody was Andre was the center of the whole cartoon. And we didn't know, no one knew for sure when Andre was going to quit working or what his state was. And we knew it was getting harder and harder for him to keep wrestling. And but I drew that cartoon for him. And I remember we got every wrestler in the dressing room to sign it. I think I drew every wrestler that ever worked for the company while I was there in the cartoon. So it was a pretty elaborate cartoon. Probably 100 different wrestlers on the cartoon. And when everybody signed it, every wrestler signed it for Andre. And I remember when it was in the Sky Dome in Toronto, WrestleMania 6, I guess. And I handed it to him, and I remember he turned it over, flipped it over to sign the back of it. And I said, no, I said, "It's for you." And he turned it back around. And he got quite choked up seeing the cartoon. And I remember he started to get tears in his eyes because I think he was just caught off guard by the moment. And I think it was maybe closer to the end for Andre than anyone realized. And I can remember he kind of got tears coming in his eyes a little bit, like they started well up, and I could tell it's like Andre the Giant's getting emotional, and I could tell like Andre was like, that's not how he wanted to. He's a pretty tough, hard guy. Like he doesn't want to show that kind of emotion. And I can remember I noticed it, and there was all a bunch of wrestlers all crowded around, kind of like laughing at the cartoon and stuff. And Andre had this moment, and I could tell, and I was like, and I remember I distracted everyone, like, look at this, and this is where I look at this guy, and I could tell, just in that little moment, that Andre was so grateful that I didn't let him get emotional. But as far as working with Andre, I do have one last little story about that, is that Andre, I never worked with Andre other than Battle Royals. And I remember we flew all the way from America straight to Italy. And after we landed, we went straight from the airport right to the arena. Straight, no sleep, no hotel or anything. And which is like exhausting. I can remember it was like my feet were like rubber, my legs were like rubber. And actually, it's not safe to even wrestle like that when you have no sleep. But that was how WWE ran in those days. And Anyway, I walk in the dressing room in Milan, Italy, and I look up on, this is probably about 1988, and I look up on, they usually have a little sheet of paper in the dressing room with all the matchups for the card, because sometimes there's a change in the card, so you can't go by the program. That's what, when you walk in the dressing room, that's the card. You know, there might be changes that are made. And I walk in, it's like second match or third match on the card, Bret Hart versus Andre the Giant. And it's like, I remember like being stunned, like Bret Hart, Andre the Giant, I haven't even slept. And it's like, how, what kind of hell match am I gonna have with Andre the Giant? Andre's right there in the dressing room playing cards. Andre always played crib and had like at least 3 magnums of really expensive red wine was part of his contract every night he drank. Every single day, every night, Andre, the only fuel he had was alcohol, and red wine was his choice of poisons. And so I remember like kind of freaking out a little bit, not in a bad way, but I'm like, why am I wrestling Andre? Like, why am I wrestling you? And he's like, I don't know, you know, and he's just playing cards. And I'm going, so what are we doing? He's like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to worry about it, but what are we doing? Like, and he wouldn't tell me. And he didn't know why, you know, let on that he didn't know why we were wrestling either. And I'm like, was starting to panic a little bit, but I'm trying not to show it. Like, I'm thinking, I'm a technical wrestler, you know. I do put holes and different things on, stuff like that, but none of that works with Andre. You know, I don't know how I'm not a big guy like Doug or, you know, my style does not correlate very well with that match with Andre. You know, and I kept saying this, I don't know what we're going to do, and, you know, again, I kept going to Andre, and he was just kind of playing dumb, and like he didn't know anything about it. And it was like, so what are we doing? Like the bell rings of the match before us, like their match is over, and it's like, we're up. What are we doing? And he's like, don't worry, I beat you with an elbow. I remember he told me he's going to beat me with an elbow. And it's like, okay, well, how are we going to go into it? And he goes, don't worry about it. He walks out to the ring, and you know, and I don't know how much wine he had. So I usually fear a bit, but I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'll tell you. And I'm like kind of freaking out because I never wrestled with Andre before, and Andre's the last guy in the world you want to piss off. But anyway, so I just remember we started having this match. I tie up with Andre. I'm thinking, this is so crazy, you know. I tie up with him. And all I know is that Andre made me look like $1 million. Like I remember eventually, like within the first 2 or 3 minutes, I had him tied up in the ropes and I'm punching on his head and stuff. And I'm like, I'm making a comeback on Andre. Like, holy shit. And really, I was flattered by it, but at the same time, I was totally feeling my way through the dark on this whole match. And I remember Andre eventually started to beat on me or whatever it was. I remember I rolled under the rope, you know. I remember Andre, you know, I'd seen him do it with Jim Duggan and different wrestlers where you put one foot on your chest, yeah, and then he'd stand on your chest and hold the top rope for just a couple of seconds. You know, I was pretty strong, or in the height of my best form in my life, and I remember thinking, oh, that spot, like, all right, Andre did the foot on my chest, and then I thought, here comes the second foot, and I was like, thinking of like, okay, give it to me. Like, he put that on the foot on my chest, and it was like, yeah, it was like I might as well had a dump truck with a flat tire sitting on my chest. Like it was like every ounce of air in my body just, and I could feel honestly, I swear to God, I could feel the blood drain from my, like everything was going white. If he just stood on my chest for maybe another 10 seconds, I'd say he probably could have killed me. For real. And I think that was Andre's lesson to you. Whenever he stood on your chest, was always like, I could kill you anytime I want to. I want to stay on. And when he stepped off, it was like I could feel I came back to life. I was like, oh, he's really a scary guy to work with. But I appreciated, you know, just how big a man Andre was. And then I remember, it's on some video somewhere from one of my DVDs, but the match I had, I only wrestled one time. But I remember he dropped that elbow on me, and you have to understand when you're lying on the mat, and you watch a guy 7'4", teetering sort of over top of you to drop this elbow down. He fell like in 3
pieces, like, and when his butt and his back, it was like watching a building fall down. Laying there and just going, oh my God, I didn't realize his ass is as big as a piano. And he's just teetering there, like, and all of a sudden he crumples down on you like a building. And I was like, I'm he's going to be the worst squash I ever got in my life. But anyway, he dropped this beautiful little elbow on me. It was like, it was so light and well done. And then they pinned me 1, 2, 3. I went back to the dressing room and I made a big fit, like joking fit about it. And then my shoulder was way up. It was like so up. The referee just couldn't get under to check. And it's like, you never beat me. I want a rematch. And I would joke with Andre for the rest of the years I knew that about I wanted a rematch from the one match that we had because my shoulder was never, but he never gave me fair. And it was a kind of a good joke. But Andre was, he was a very special guy. If you knew him, if you became his friend, he was a real friend. He never forgot his friends. But I will say the story about that is that I remember I came back to America and I ran into Pat Patterson, who was Vince's right-hand guy, did all the booking with us. I said, why the hell did they put me with Andre the Giant in Milan, Italy? And he told me, he goes, Andre asked for me to, he said he wanted to wrestle Bret Hart one time.